Hi, folks. I'm Aparajit, and I lead the tech sales at Rakuten for banks and financial institutions in India. I have with me Mr. Gajanan, who is a senior leader with a large PSU bank in the country. So, welcome to the podcast, Mr. Gajanan.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Um, just to set the context, the idea for today's discussion is that the modern day banking has changed a lot from traditional brick and mortar, branches to what we call as digitization of banks. Um, and whether it's sales or service, banks are increasingly kind of relying on technology uh, to be the main fulcrum for customer touchpoints. In that sense, frankly, APIs have become extremely important. It's important because APIs have become the backbone of this technology. But again, as they say, with great opportunity comes great responsibility. And today, banks are kind of very cognizant of the fact that they need to be very careful of the security and safety of sensitive information that's flowing through these APIs. This is basically the premise of today's discussion. So, Gajanan, from your vantage point, how are banks like yours and the others in the country, most of these financial institutions, ensuring that the rapidly expanding API ecosystem not only remains compliant to the watchdog or the regulator mandates, but also secure because these features are kind of being rolled out at a very fast pace. So just wanted to throw open the conversation with this.
So thank you. So the innovations, in the Indian banking sector is, governed and driven by the RBI guidelines, okay, which specifies the cybersecurity framework, the IT governance, and guidelines on the digital lending. Now, having said this, this also covers the API governance uh, and the measures to take care of the API endpoints and the API security. The various guidelines of the RBI specifically asks how the API to be governed, including the API vendors who have provided these particular API. Uh, Now, this is also aggravated, by the number of transactions happening through the UPI and the open banking, which put a pressure on the existing banking ecosystems, which is large in number. Now, the existing measures to take care of the security of the API are limited. Banks carry out the internal audits. Banks carry out the VAPT vulnerability assessment test and the vulnerability scanning. But seeing the large volumes of these transactions, banks need to take care these particular transactions through various dynamic tools, including the API monitoring, observability tools, so which also includes the metrics, visibility, and the API tracing. Yeah.
If I can just come in over here, that is exactly what I was thinking because if you see RBI guidelines, they're like very comprehensive and in-depth. Having said that, also, and RBI keeps constantly updating these guidelines and these frameworks to make it more in tune with the modern challenges. What you rightly said, the volume is so big, so, these traditional methods sometimes become a little, difficult to actually manage these volumes. So, as you rightly pointed out, something like an API monitoring system and observability tools uh, is probably the way forward. And I totally agree. This is exactly what, when I keep meeting the CIOs and all, they keep CISOs, they keep saying, yes, this is no longer just a tick box. It's like a must-have necessity. I'm sure you'll also, agree to this.
So yeah, I do agree with you. This is not the checkpoint, one-time checkpoint. This is the change in mindset. We need to have the change in mindset and the culture to take care of these compliances. Uh, because the if you see the volume of the internal traffic as well as the external traffic, it is tremendous. Okay, now there are limitations to monitor this traffic with the conventional tools. So the thing is that you need some AI enabled tools to monitor such a huge volume. If you see the API volume recently in the month of August, it is tremendous. It is in the billions. Okay. Now, whether the normal tools can handle this kind of traffic? No. So you need certain AI enabled tools where they will see the patterns in the traffic and a baseline. If you decide the baseline of the normal behavior of the API, and then if you see the deviation or from the normal behavior, you'll be able to take certain measures.
Perfect. I mean, yeah, I think upgrade is the key. We have to keep
Yeah.
learning the newer vulnerabilities and how do we cope up with them. Uh, One thing that comes to my mind, see, amongst the top three API vulnerabilities, Bola is supposed to be one of them. So, uh, how do you how are banks kind of ensuring a legit user cannot either inadvertently or even maliciously not able to access another customer's sensitive data or perform any unauthorized actions? And Gajanan, to be honest, I mean, this is one question even my 75-year-old dad will want to know the answer for this, because they're always very concerned because I mean, with the recent incidents which keep happening, and RBI keeps sensitizing and giving information, and Ministry of Finance keeps giving out those information. I think we would want to learn from you, how are banks preventing this unauthorized accesses? And also, if you can, for the sake of setting the context, if you can also tell our viewers what exactly a bola is. If you can just touch upon that, that would be super helpful.
So I'll start with the existing, framework. How do we carry it? So we have various types of authentication at various levels. We have started, banking industry as a whole has started the role-based access to the users, uh, where user will have the access to particular data which is identified as a sensitive data. Uh, uh, so any user using the system will have the a role based authentication. So we'll see whether that particular user will have the access to the particular data, and if any deviations is there, there is a escalation matrix, and there are measures to handle that particular incidents. uh, Having said this, many banks have started the zero trust architecture put in place. Now there are various entities in the system, because now the system is becoming very complex. You have the the normal system, legacy systems. Uh, Now these legacy systems coexist with the cloud native applications. Now the challenge is how to take care of the security, which where your systems are very diverse in nature. You have the legacy applications which are running for the last 25 years. You have the newly born cloud native applications. Okay, now to make these applications unified, and to carry out the multiple activities, including the putting the security controls and having the observability tools, data processing, which becomes a real challenge. Isn't it? So, banks have started, to put into place the JT architecture, where in each and every call of the API, or in every access of your endpoint or any system, you need the role-based access, and you need the authentication. So that we have started. Apart from that, there are certain monitoring tools and controls where we carry out the audit, IS audit and all. Okay, so these measures take care the data is safe and secure.
No, this is very reassuring, and the common people are, what I was saying, they're not cognizant or not much aware of what actually the kind of effort that goes behind the scenes to protect their information, their money. I'll surely pass on some of these to my dad.
Yeah, sure.
This is not just a question, this is a transition again I was talking about, which I've seen over past 2 decades that I've been very closely working with banks, is that banks are no longer the lending, the CASA, the current account, savings account, asset liability workshops anymore, right? They are becoming tech companies. In fact, banks have large developer teams, technology teams. Their backend centers resemble an IT company nowadays. So, in this scenario, how do you think banks are able to identify and manage shadow or zombie, APIs? Because you know it's no longer just doing financial transactions. It's also technology is very deeply embedded, not just with systems, but also with human intervention. So, how are banks managing the shadow or zombie APIs?
So there are a couple of challenges. One is the APIs, which are not used for a longer time. Okay, the APIs are in place. They're are in place, but we are not using those APIs. Now let us understand why this has happened. We are using the old legacy systems, for a longer time. Okay, so there will be the API which are migrated. The banking system have done a lot of migrations, a lot of amalgamations, where smaller banks have merged into the larger banks. Okay, now these APIs and API endpoints are lying into the systems. uh, you know the other type are the vulnerable APIs, where banks have not taken care of authentication and all that, or somewhere the weak algorithms will be there. We need to take care of that. Now, what are the measures? How we take care is that there are certain tools to detect whether their endpoints are pending, which are unused, for a longer time. Okay, so with the help of these platforms, we can identify the zombie APIs which are not used, for a longer time, and it can be migrated to the next version of those APIs, uh, or it can be discarded. So that call we have to take. Another point is we carry out various audits. Okay, and we identify if anything is lying in the system, and then we make it as a point to close the audit observations. So there are multiple ways to identify these APIs which are not in use, and either to upgrade those APIs or discard the APIs.
And also, I'm sure there's a lot of documentation which is maintained for the developers, the developer dev community within the bank, right? I mean, what is the process? How do you tackle it? And I'm certain. That's there, right?
So in earlier days, banks used to have the manual documentation, of the API.
Mm.
But now with the advent of the technology, when the technology is getting mature, there are, a lot of sophisticated tools where this, documentation is,
Not
happening. Now, this is one thing. Second is we have, our internal mechanism wherein, when we make live, the project and hand over to the different team, we make the documentation of, these particular systems. Okay, so that is part of the process where we document, including the who is the owner of this particular API, and who is the owning department, of this API. So these are documented. What is lacking is that you should have the control overall control of the API in the organization, total number of APIs, who is the owner. So that kind of inventory, if it is there, so it will be very useful for the reuse of those API by different teams. Okay, so these are certain measures we can take care in the future.
great. Um, Something just I was just came to my mind. So beyond the traditional DAST and the SAST, how do you think banks are embedding continuous API vulnerability assessment directly in the CI/CD pipelines? So they want to ensure, I'm sure, that the security flaws are identified and remediated even before the API reaches production. So can you throw some light on this?
Yeah, yeah. So this security and the vulnerability is a continuous process. Okay, it's not a one-time activity. Uh, so banks have different system. Okay, some of the banks have the UAT environment. Some of the banks have the pre-production environment, wherein they test with the near real-time data before moving into the production systems. Now, there are the security scans at various levels. First level is the UAT. Okay. So there are the internal, processes wherein before, making the system live, you have to take the approvals from your CISOs. Okay, they in turn, will check the APIs and all the security controls, including what keys you are using, how keys are rotating, then what are the encryption for the payload, what is the endpoint, whether endpoint is whitelisted. Now, so many controls will be there. Now, having said this, if the banks have the DevSec of environments, these particular API vulnerabilities will be monitored continuously in the UAT environment, through the pre-prod environment, and in the production environment. Uh, so there are various tools. Okay, we can integrate various tools in the these environments in order to check the vulnerabilities of the API through the CI/CD pipeline. Another point, and very important, if you see in the banking sector, maximum, so some banks have, the in-house development, full-fledged in-house development, but many banks, they rely on the external partners, for the development, overall system development. Now, as per the RBI's guidelines, there is a need, okay, as part of the compliance to uh, guess the vendor risk assessment. You have to submit the vendor risk assessment. So now, as part the vendor risk assessment, you have to carry out all the activities, including these API. What we carry out for our own system, the same is replicated to the systems where the environment of the vendor is secure, and whether the vendor system is taking care of all these security guidelines.
No, I totally resonate with this because when So we work with a lot of large banks, and their vendor assessment is extremely uh, not just critical, but very comprehensive and in-depth in terms of and this is not just a one time. It keeps coming periodically in terms of us submitting requisite amount of data and information to the banks to ensure that we are following the guidelines. Um, just one thing that is coming, I mean, as a technology um, person, which keeps coming to my mind. See, the churn rate of, I wouldn't say the churn rate, I mean, the rate at which the uh, the releases need to happen are also very quick. You need quick releases. And often, what I see, and any developer will say, so much processes, these APIs, these become kind of a bottleneck. If I can just play the devil's advocate over here. So how do banks balance this velocity of releases versus, guidelines, processes? Because end of the day, you have a tight schedule, you have a tight deadline. So can you throw some light on that?
There is a real pressure, on the organizations to keep pace with the technology and the security. One side you have the business verticals where they give the tight
Timeline.
timelines, for the rollout. On the other hand, you have the CISOs, who are after you, okay, for the compliance of the security guidelines. Now these particular process is driven by the uh, catalyst, which is the RBI guidelines. So RBI guidelines on the cyber security framework, IT governance, and the digital lending guidelines are really helpful. So this is not only the security compliance, but it helps in order to have the more productivity and secure your system. Second part is, you know, many banks have now the DevSecOps, frameworks, and they follow the DevSecOps, frameworks diligently in order to, balance between the productivity and security compliance. Uh, Now, as said earlier, at any point of the system, you have the vulnerability checks, whether it is your test environment or the pre-prod environment and the production environment. Of course, these systems are in place. So instead of one-time activity, when your system is ready, when your deliverable is ready, and scanning for the hold the system, for the vulnerability assessment and API vulnerabilities. If you align your system, okay, right from the development stage, okay, for the security vulnerabilities or any logic, some gap in the logic and all, so that will really be helpful in the operational resilience and security compliance. Another thing is again, integrating, because many of your systems, more than 50% of the activities are integrated through the API. You can say it as the UPI 2.0, or the open banking, or the account aggregator framework. So these systems, which are the modern day technologies, are driven by the API. uh, Now there are various tools, which takes care of the API vulnerability in the API systems. Okay, which takes care these systems on the real time basis. They check your data, even though it is encrypted. Okay, whether any gap is there. So having these tools in place, we can take care of this, security.
Um, just before, I mean, we have been having this nice conversation. Uh, just one question. I mean, one final question I have. Uh, See, in the modern day, banking is mostly digital. Everybody uses a UPI. It's only the customers don't know how many API calls are happening or what is the technology backbone behind it. Uh, the flip side of it is, as we have been discussing, is that you need to put in stringent security measures in place to prevent an attack. And I think a couple of years back, or maybe a year back, there were a lot of cyber attacks happening in the Indian banking system, which keeps happening. And I think our banking system is very robust and resilient, and that's why most of these are thwarted. Uh, I'm certain it also happens in the real world that actually an incident does happen. So these are all the preventive measures. Uh, and incidents do happen. I mean, it's natural. It's but natural. So in that scenario, um, uh, and RBI has very strict mandates in terms of how quickly you need to report that, within the incident happening, what is the initial report, and then you follow up with a detailed report. So how are banks kind of achieving this real-time comprehensive observability from an API perspective, so that it can quickly identify the blast radius, analyze these attack vectors, and the response, the incident response. First, they need to understand why it happened, what are the affected areas, and quickly they need to send an initial report, and then make a remediation, and then they need to send a detailed analysis. So, how are banks kind of achieving? What are your views on that?
So, banks, as mandated by the RBI, banks have prepared, incident reporting framework,
Mm.
okay, which takes care of any incident happening, uh, uh, you know, uh, it comprises of the various team members who should be part of the team, including this also include the cross functional teams, which includes the cyber security team, business vertical team,
Interest.
compliance team, and all the teams which are required to mitigate the effects of these particular incidents. Uh, there are clear-cut communication strategies when incident happens, when it should be communicated to the stakeholders, and how it should be communicated. So these incident metrics are, part of this, framework, incident framework, where all these escalations are well written, and these are drilled down on the regular basis.
Oh,
So when really incident happens, we can take care, mitigate that incidents, and contain that particular incident. Now, as banks are you know uh, having the data, okay, those banks are the custodians of the data, customers data. So this becomes very important aspect.
mm,
Now, one is the incident matrix. Another measures is always we have the BCP plan in place, wherein some incident happens on your main system. There is a DR in place. Okay, so many banks have the DR with full capacity. You know, some are having with different capacities, but DR also in place, and banks have to carry out this DCDR drill or the BCP drill, on the regular basis, so that we can check these systems are running and operational. Apart from that, there is a fallback arrangement at the server level if your systems are critical. you have the node 1 node 2 system where any service is not working on node 1, it can be switch over to the node 2. So that level of the fallback arrangement, it is in place. Then banks have the very well defined the risk assessment and risk reporting framework in place. If some incident happens, this is reported to the RBI. RBI has certain guidelines for the reporting the incident to the RBI depending upon the severity of that particular incident, whether that incident is affecting small segment of the customers or overall full set of the customers. So according we have to comply those guidelines, and we have to submit the incident report to the RBI and various other financial regulatory authorities. Apart from that, we do carry out the user training on the regular basis
Hmm.
in terms of the cyber security and the compliance, where all the employees, or to that matter, we have to educate the end users on the cyber security measures like the phishing, ransomware, and password, setting of the password length, complexity, and all. Okay, so these measures generally the bank takes care to mitigate any adverse incidents.
One, and see, when it happens, I think this is a pretty mammoth task to correlate, these disparate logs, stitching together and telling it, why it actually happens. And that's where, I think, as initially you had said, a comprehensive API observability tool, which actually helps you do that. In a much faster way. The idea is not just data points. How do you stitch together and find the reason for it and submit a report? Uh, Interesting. I mean, thank you so much, Mr. Gajanan. It was wonderful learning from you, from your experience. And I'm certain we'll have a chance to catch up over a coffee once again. Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aparajit. Thank you for nice conversation we had. There is, there are a lot of things, to learn. Thank you so much.